SpaceChem! Welcome back! It's been a while, hasn't it? Yes, about a year and a half since my last video of SpaceChem. That was when I beat Suspicious Behavior, and it's been a year and a half for me to beat the next level. Not counting this one, which was super easy, and wasn't worth a video. This one was incredibly hard. Both of these incredibly hard. I haven't really looked at this one, but, it seemed like the harder of the two, so I started with this one. So we'll just jump right into it. So the reason this was so hard is because they throw a lot of new tricks at you all at once. One of them is that you have 3 different inputs up here, all different orientations, and this one even is a different quantity, which is incredibly hard to deal with. So basically, with these 2 reactors that you're given, you have to deal with all these different variations and come up with the same output. So there's these 2 inputs, so you get hydrogen and you get all this weird carbon stuff, and you have to output this weird guy over here. And so all you have are these 2 reactors, and another thing that's new here is you can't move these reactors. You can't move them, you can't place any more, you can't change what type they are. You can see the story is that they've been like overgrown by the planet, so they're stuck here. And that means you also can't move the pipeline. And that, if you've seen my brute force video, you know that I like to just drag these pipes all over the place so that they never fill up and solve the problem that way, and I wasn't able to do that here. So I really had to make sure that this was efficient and that all the timing came out properly. I guess the last sort of curveball that they throw at you is this feedback loop right here. So I've never seen anything like this. I've never thought of doing anything like this in the previous ones, where you have a feedback loop running into your own reactor. And so I knew that I needed to utilize this in some specific way in order to make this work, or at least that's what I thought. You know, they wouldn't give you this unless you needed it. So I thought, I mean, I guess there's a lot of solutions to these puzzles, but I thought that, you know, I needed to make the most use of this if I was going to beat this level. And I don't know if I really did. I'll show you in a minute what I had it do. I mean, obviously I got the solution to work properly, but I don't know if I took full advantage here. So I haven't looked at any other videos of this on YouTube, so I don't know what the clever, you know, really quick solutions are. Like, you can see a bunch of people got some solution at around 3,000 cycles. I'm sort of guessing that everybody just copied one solution, but hey, you know, maybe they came up with it on their own. Okay, so this is a complicated mess, so I'll just give you the sort of the strategy here. The strategy is that I want to output this. I want to output a C and omega in this orientation, or at least in this position, every time. And I want to output the hydrogen in the exact same position. So that's really hard because you have all these different positions that they start in, so it's really hard to get them to output in the same way. So what I'm going to do is, if this is a sensor reactor, so I've got the sensor right here, so it's detecting this carbon. So if this comes in with the carbon, I'm going to let red take care of outputting the entire thing. He's going to break it up all himself, and then he's going to take it out all himself. And I'm not going to slow it down too much because watching my own videos, I sort of feel like that might get annoying for the audience when I constantly pause it. So I'll just kind of let it roll for a little bit and let you kind of track what's happening. And so, okay, so red output all 3 of these. You can see, I don't know if he got the exact same orientation every time, but they were at least in the same position. And while he sits here and waits, blue is now going to go on this for loop, F-O-U-R, for loop, and output 4 H2 molecules. And this is going to repeat, so this will be the same thing. So maybe I'll slow this one down. Okay, so he's already output 1. He's outputting the second one right now. And he's counting this flip-flop up so that after he outputs all 3, he'll just exit the loop. Okay, so right there, here's the problem I ran into. He unbonded this an extra time. I didn't want him to do that, but you can see now, if I can get it out of the way, you can see this only has a single bond now, and I ran into some trouble later, because in the final product you need it to be triple bonded there, and I was running into a problem where I was bonding 1 extra time. So whenever it was double bonded, I also realized in my last video that if you look down at the bottom, down here, you can actually see what these things are in the pipeline. I didn't actually notice that before. So you can see most of these are double bonded. Well, all of them are double bonded, right? Okay, that one's single bonded. Yeah, so that was a problem. So I was only bonding one extra time, and it would give me a double bond instead of a triple and break the puzzle. So that's a problem, and I thought about this for a while, thinking, how can I avoid this? How can I grab it in some different way? But there's just no space here. Like, I just ran out of space, and I could not think of any way to get this to avoid that problem. So I eventually corrected for it later here. So I correct for it over here with the blue one, which I'll show you later. But right now, we'll just let that go. And another thing I noticed, maybe I should have done this before recording this, but I think I have a lot of redundancies here. Basically, as I mentioned, one of the difficulties is accounting for all these variances in the inputs. So basically, you want to have different inputs give the same output is the easiest way to explain it and to have this work. So I created a lot of these flip-flops, like this one right here. So you can see one time it rotates counterclockwise, one time it rotates clockwise. I think that's it for the red. And I don't know if I needed this. I think I ended up with some redundancies in my solution because as I built this, piece by piece, you sort of add on to it. You don't just build from scratch. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. You have to keep tweaking in little bits and pieces at a time. And I think I ended up accounting for the same problem multiple times. So I think I could probably cut down on my cycles and symbols by removing some of these redundant solutions. So you can see this 2x2 right here, this 2x2 right here, and this bit right here, as well as the red, all these grab and drops. I believe those are redundant, and I only need one or two of them instead of I have like 4 different cases where it does that. But I tend to not go back over these once I beat them because I'm sort of burned out on them, so maybe I'll just leave it as it is. We'll see. So, okay, so now we're on to the next one here. So the first two it gave me were this one, which was kind of troublesome because you have to, when you're testing your solution, you kind of want to see, okay, let's see how it handles this one. But you can't because you've got to get this out of the way first before you can deal with this, because this one is the first 2 inputs that it gives you. And it's random which ones come in, but every time you play it, it's the same order. So it's random order, but it's the same randomness every time you stop and start. Anyway, so what this sensor is doing here, as I mentioned before, it's sensing when it's this weird guy, this 3-carbon one. So whenever it's not that, red is just going to stay right here. He doesn't do anything. He just goes back to his sink and waits for blue. Blue, instead of just getting hydrogens, which is all he did before was get 4 hydrogens, 4 H2s. Now he's not going to do that. He's not going to do that right away. He's gonna do a different loop where he handles breaking this up, and so my thinking was red breaking up the 3-carbon one took up all the space up here, and I just had no more room for him to do anything different. So blue had all that space free because all blue had to do was just move hydrogens until this point. So I'll just let blue handle these variances. And that ended up working out okay. So I'll just kind of buzz through this real quick, and hopefully you can follow along. So there's one of the things I was using to account for it. So you can see he does some loops here to output those, and then he's going to start outputting his 4 hydrogens again, because I need to make sure I have enough hydrogens going out every time I output carbons. So there was a lot of math involved in this one where you can't output too many hydrogens or too many carbons because there's no, like I said, well, I don't know if I said that in this video or not, sorry. There's no recycler here, so you can't just get rid of any extra. Like in a lot of the previous problems, they give you a recycler, and you can just say, well, I don't need this, I'm just going to get rid of it. And you can't do that here, you have to use everything, so you have to make sure you have the right proportions, which is really tough because of this different quantity here. So most of the time, 2/3 of the time, there's 2 carbons and 2 omegas, but 1/3 of the time there's 3 carbons and 3 omegas. And the way I ended up accounting for that is by not accounting for it. There's enough leeway here in this feedback loop that it just fills up with the extra carbons without breaking the solution. Because I'm only outputting 4 hydrogens, 4 H2s, so 8 total. So you need 2 H2s per one of these little molecules that's going out right now. So basically every time these go out, the 4 hydrogens are perfect. But whenever this one goes out, there's one extra one of these guys that's not getting taken care of. Okay, so yeah, so maybe I'll slow it down next time it goes around. See what happens. Hurry up, blue. Okay, here we go. So all red guy's doing is waiting, and he's done that a few times now. So blue's gonna come in here, unbond it, and then he's gonna grab one. And now the problem I had to deal with here is that the only difference, because I have these grabs here to make it so that it's the same, whether it's this one or this one, either way, he drops it right here and it gets unbonded right where I need it to. So sometimes it's a horizontal right here, and sometimes it's a vertical right here, and I could not allow that to pass through, because if a horizontal came in here, it would just like instantly hit the wall and break. So what I need to do is make them all vertical, and I don't really care at this point in time whether it's carbon on top or omega on top, because I have ways to deal with that over here. So right now I just need this to be vertical, so that's what this 2x2 is right here, and you'll see that here in a second. So he's going to drop it and then pick up the carbon and then rotate it. And there's no flip-flop there or anything, so he passes through that 2x2 every single time. The difference is that if this was vertical, he wouldn't grab it right here, meaning that he wouldn't hit this rotate, meaning that he just grabs it back here again and outputs a vertical. So the vertical stays vertical, the horizontal gets rotated, and that's perfect. That's exactly what I need. Outputs that, grabs this one. So you can see even those two right there were a different orientation, and you can see that down at the bottom as I mouse over. And that's something I'm going to have to deal with in the next reactor. So I think you've seen everything there is to see in here. I guess I could talk about some of the problems I had, which was basically a lot of timing issues. I've talked already about how there's different inputs, which is really hard. The timing issues I had was that I was creating way too many sync commands. Like, in the past, I usually have a bunch of sync commands, especially since these guys go on so many loops. I was putting sync commands inside the loops that they go through multiple times, thinking, my initial thought was, oh, I need to alternate carbon with hydrogen, otherwise it'll break. So I was trying to output one carbon, one hydrogen, one carbon, one hydrogen. And that was getting really tricky because their loops are not the same count. Because this is maybe they are the same count, but it's still tricky to line up. Because you can't, like, let's say there's 2 syncs inside a 2 count. That's not the same as 2 syncs inside a 3 count. Because he's going to hit those 2 syncs 3 times, so that ends up as 6, whereas this one's only 4. And then you get all out of sync because you can't line it up, and then you try to add one somewhere else, but that isn't within the 2 count, so it's only 1, and that's 5 instead of 4, and blah 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 blah. So syncs are really tough, and the reason I had syncs in there is because, like I said, you build it up over time. You build it up over time, and so initially, whenever I'm making one of these solutions, I sort of just throw in a bunch of syncs, kind of to see how it goes, and just thinking, I need all these syncs. So I had like 2 syncs over here, and I had a sync in here, and I had 2 syncs right here, and it was just messing up. I would get so many times where blue was running around pretending like he was taking care of a carbon, but there was no carbon there because the red hadn't hit the input. So it was really messing me up. So I solved that by basically clearing out all the syncs. I made it much cleaner. And you can see there's 2 blue syncs and 2 red syncs, and that's much cleaner. So basically blue waits here while red is dealing with this. So you can see right now blue's waiting right here while red deals with all the carbons. And once red's done, he's going to hit this, and then red's going to wait here while blue deals with all the hydrogens. And then blue's going to queue them up, they'll input another one, and they'll see what it is, and depending on what it is, they'll take their different loops. And so that worked out very cleanly. It was very nice. Okay, let's skip over here now. We're going to start it over. Skip ahead so we get some input here. Okay, so here, red is doing a lot of interesting things. Some of it is unnecessary. In fact, I know for a fact that this grab right here isn't needed. I had that in there because at one point I was outputting in this position as well as this position, so these middle 2 as well as the bottom 2. And if that was happening, I would change this to a grab only, and it would grab it here, Although then it would have bumped into the bottom. So this, frankly, this would not have worked at all. You know what, why don't I just fix this right now? We don't need this. Let's just change this around. There we go. Get rid of a bunch of symbols. Okay, that should be a little bit cleaner. So, okay, so let's start it back up. Okay, so all he does is go down here and grab. So he's sensing the input. So if the input is not hydrogen, all I want him to do is sort of parse out this carbon and change it to this feedback loop. So all he's going to do is carry it to the feedback loop. And he's not going to hit any sinks because I don't want blue to do anything while this is happening. I can just let this build up in the feedback loop as much as I need to. And here's another situation where, you know what, maybe this might be unnecessary too, because this was to deal with any horizontal. Although, okay, I don't think I need these. But this is still okay. I'm starting to lose track here. This shouldn't be necessary. And grabs the bottom. This right here. That's fine. That should work perfectly. Okay. Before I had that in there, it was to deal with the horizontal ones. But as I mentioned, I fixed the horizontal problem previously. So a lot of this was, you know, I would count for it in one place and then fix it somewhere else, and not delete the previous accounting. So I ended up double accounting for a lot of stuff. Okay, so he's grabbing the bottom one. I want him to grab the top one. And it might not necessarily be carbon on top, omega on bottom, but that's okay, because blue is gonna deal with that with this sensor right here, and I'll show you that when we get to it. So let's start it back up. And so red's just got these 3 to output, and now he's going to grab a hydrogen, and he senses the hydrogen, so he goes on a different loop. This time his loop takes him over to the bonders over here, and he's going to debond here, which leaves a hydrogen here, and then he's going to drop right here, and that sort of lines up a nice little slot for the blue guy to come in with the carbon and omega and create this vertical column right here. So we'll watch that happen. And blue, I want to make sure blue's holding omega, which he was there. And then he's going to wait right here. And he cues the red guy right here. He's going to wait right here. He has to wait up high because red has to drop stuff right here sometimes. And he's not going to move again until red brings in another hydrogen, which he happens to be doing right now. And he's going to leave him in the exact same place, which is fine because I've got enough bonders here that I can deal with it. And now I'm going to stick these 2 hydrogens on each end, so one here and then one up above the carbon. I'm going to do that by grabbing the first one, rotating twice, and then grabbing the second one. And grabbing that second one also gave me the triple bond. This is all unnecessary. That's to deal with the single bond one. And then he outputs that. Let's watch this guy float his way to victory. Woohoo! 1 out of 40. Okay, so now I've got a nice little queue here, so blue's ready to go whenever, which is great because if there was nothing there and red triggered him, then I would be in trouble. Oh, and you missed it right there, dang. So that's where blue accounted for that difference in orientation. I might get another one like that. Let's drop these real quick. Okay. No, that's fine. Yeah, I want to make sure he's grabbing the omega. However, what you can see here is that double, triple bond problem I was talking about. So you can see right now he's got just double bond. And that was a problem because I was basically just dropping him here and then outputting. And so the way to fix that is to basically run him over this bonder one more time. So you can see this flip-flop, bond, and then just roll back. So he just sort of runs over this bonder 1 extra time. Technically 2 extra times, but fortunately the bonds are all full. So if I overbond, there's no problem. Because hydrogen can only have 1 bond, carbon can only have 4, so I think omega can have a bunch because it's a fake maximum bonds question mark you can see at the bottom there. But carbon can only have 4, so that's fine. So yeah, so that bonds it up a few extra times and dumps it out. And okay, that's another omega. I'm hoping you can see that improper orientation I was talking about. Here we go. Okay, so now he's grabbing the carbon, and I don't want him to do that, because if he did, it would all... Well, no, it wouldn't even work at all. So that's what this is for. So I'm going to run over the sensor that I used before and get him to sense whether that's a carbon. And if it is, he's going to rotate it and then drop and grab it. And that is perfect since he has to run over this grab twice, but since it's a grab only, it doesn't affect it if it is the omega. And it allows me to reverse that orientation, and I don't need to run over that rotate that would be correct if he was holding the Omega, if that makes any sense. And now it's the same as before, so that's just a little check right there. So I had all these little checks to try to get everything to be the same output, because you have a bunch of different inputs and you need everything to be the same output. Here comes another single bond that has to be dealt with, but he deals with all of them the same way. You know, if it doesn't need it, then it doesn't get it, and if it doesn't need it, then it gets it, and it's perfect. So yeah, I think you've seen just about everything here. Again, this took me like a year and a half. Obviously, I wasn't looking at it for every day for the past year and a half. I just happened to be going through my old YouTube videos and saw SpaceChem and thought, oh, I haven't done SpaceChem in a year and a half. Wow, I can't believe it's been that long. This puzzle's just really stumped me. I mean, this game is just so hard. And I don't know, like looking at it now, it's almost like, oh boy, this is easy, you know, now that it's done. And that's but it was really hard, and I've sort of prided myself in this game in never having looked up a solution, at least not before I've got my own. I've looked up a few after the fact, but I've never looked it up beforehand, and I like that. Like, you know, it gives me my own solution. It gives me a chance to think. I sort of noticed I've graduated from college. I was actually still in college when I posted the last video for this. I've graduated since then, and I've sort of felt like I've lost the ability to sort of mentally manipulate objects, which I think is a big part. You may have, at least I've read some stuff about this, how that's a big part of learning math and science, is the ability to sort of manipulate equations and manipulate numbers visually, almost like physically in your head. And I felt like I wasn't very good at that anymore because I hadn't been practicing it. And I thought, well, what better way to practice it than with SpaceChem? And so I came back to it, and I got stuck on it for a really long time. But I stuck with it, and I was able to get this solution, which I'm really pleased with. I had a lot of times where I was getting stuck at like 10 out of 40, and then it would break, and I knew I was close. You know, I could smell victory, but I just wasn't quite getting at this. So I kept having to tweak it and tweak it, and I think that's why you can see I've got all these redundant measures that don't need to be there. In fact, I don't think this needs to be here. Let's give it a try. I'm actually just going to get rid of this. Yes, he doesn't. I don't think he needs to do anything. I think he only needs to grab right here. So we can even just move this down right there. And let's see if it just breaks instantly. Nope, still working. Sweet. Yeah, so I had a lot of redundancies in here. So the only fix I really needed was this one and this one. And maybe I can get rid of that, but I'm not going to stress you guys out with that. So yeah, there's my solution. I'm really proud of it, and I really enjoyed working on it, although it was stressful. It's always nice to get the solution. I was so ecstatic I didn't get a chance to comb back over the solution to sort of fix it, or at least I didn't even get a chance to understand it. So let's just run it out to the end here. I'll get a new personal best. Yes, incredible. So yeah, I cut down on the symbols, got under 4,000 cycles, which is nice. And yeah, again, there's that big spike. And you know, I've said it before, some people probably copy, and you know, that's fine. But I think it's a lot of fun to come up with your own solution. So I encourage you, if you're watching this, you probably have this game, try to come up with your own solution and stick with it. And you know, you can really push yourself and come up with some fun little solutions to these problems. And I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to try to beat this game, although I've got a whole nother world to go, and who knows how hard this boss fight's going to be. But yeah, I think that's it. I think I went over everything. So yeah, there's my solution. I guess that's it. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.